The weight of the words hung in the air, each syllable a hammer blow against the fragile edifice of her life. Cheating wife. The label, once so foreign, now clung to her like a shroud. Claire stared at her reflection in the dimly lit mirror, the ghost of a smile playing on her lips, a bitter, self-deprecating curve. She was Claire, the woman who had believed in the sanctity of marriage, the woman who had pledged eternal fidelity, and now, the woman who had broken it all. The choices she had made echoed in the silence, a cacophony of regret and self-loathing. How had she, a seemingly decent person, arrived at this desolate crossroads? This wasn't just a story of infidelity. It was a story of love that had become tangled in the thorns of neglect, desire that had blossomed in the shadows of discontent, and the arduous journey of facing the consequences of her actions. This is her story, raw, unfiltered, and painfully real. The day Claire met Andrew, the world had seemed to tilt on its axis. It was a breezy summer afternoon at a small art exhibition. She, a budding graphic designer, had been captivated by a vibrant watercolor landscape, and he, a literature professor with a disarming smile, had been engrossed in the same piece. Their eyes met, a moment pregnant with possibility. Andrew wasn't the typical handsome man. He had a kind of understated charm, a gentle humor that reached into the corners of her heart. They talked for hours that day, about art, books, dreams, and the subtle nuances of life that often went unnoticed. They discovered a shared passion for old films, a mutual love of long walks in the rain, and an uncanny ability to finish each other's sentences. He seemed to see her, truly see her, not just the exterior but the core of her being. Their relationship blossomed with a natural ease, a beautiful dance of two souls finding their rhythm. Andrew was a constant, a rock in the storm of her life. He was the calm to her occasional tempest, the voice of reason to her impulsive tendencies. When he asked her to marry him, overlooking a moonlit beach, it felt like the most natural progression of their love. Their wedding day was a kaleidoscope of emotions, joy, anticipation, and an unwavering faith in their shared future. Claire, adorned in a simple white dress, walked down the aisle, her heart overflowing with love for the man waiting at the altar. They made promises that day, promises of eternal love, unwavering loyalty, and the unwavering commitment to face the challenges life would throw their way. Through thick and thin, they had vowed, not knowing how profoundly those words would be tested. For years, they lived their fairy tale. Their small apartment was a haven of shared laughter, quiet evenings filled with reading, and weekend adventures exploring the city. They supported each other's careers, celebrating successes, and offering comfort during setbacks. They had built a life together, brick by brick, a home filled with love, security, and the unwavering belief that they were invincible as a team. Claire envisioned a future filled with shared memories, maybe a cozy house in the suburbs, and the patter of tiny feet. She was in love, truly, deeply in love. But life, as it often does, had other plans in store. Life started to become a relentless cycle of work, household chores, and the quiet monotony of routine. The spark that had once set their hearts ablaze began to dim, not with a dramatic flare-out, but a gradual, almost imperceptible fade. Claire, immersed in the demanding world of marketing, found her days blurring together, a constant rush to meet deadlines and juggle multiple projects. Andrew, increasingly burdened with the responsibilities of his academic position, retreated into his studies, his nose often buried in books. Conversations turned into hurried exchanges, date nights became rare, and the small gestures of love, the unexpected hug, the stolen kiss, faded into the background. Claire noticed a growing distance between them, a chasm that seemed to widen with each passing day. She longed for the deep conversations they used to have, the intimate sharing that had once been the foundation of their relationship. She craved the spontaneous laughter that had filled their home. But Andrew was often preoccupied, his mind seemingly lost in the labyrinths of his academic research. He listened, yes, but Claire felt unheard, unseen. She tried to initiate conversations, but they often devolved into debates about household chores or finances. Frustration mounted, not in explosive bursts, but in subtle, simmering resentment. They still loved each other, Claire told herself, a mantra she clung to like a lifeline. But it was a love that was weighed down by unspoken frustrations, unmet needs, and a growing sense of disconnection. Claire began to feel like she was living alongside Andrew, not with him. The home that had once been a haven started to feel like a gilded cage. She yearned for something. She couldn't quite articulate it, but it was a longing deep in her soul. She hadn't realized it then, but the cracks had started to form, hairline fractures in the foundation of their marriage, almost invisible, but devastating in their potential to bring it all tumbling down. She found herself questioning what had happened. Why had they grown so distant? Was this the natural trajectory of marriage, the slow withering of passion over time? Or were they just failing to nurture the love that had once bound them together? The marketing firm welcomed Daniel, a new hire fresh from a successful campaign in another state. Daniel was everything Andrew wasn't: charismatic, energetic, and effortlessly charming. He had a natural ability to make people feel seen, a knack for remembering small details, and an infectious enthusiasm that brightened up any room. Claire, initially indifferent, soon found herself drawn to his presence. His conversations were a breath of fresh air, filled with ideas, ambition, and a genuine interest in her thoughts and opinions. Daniel would often linger by her desk, engaging her in discussions about everything from the latest marketing strategies to obscure historical facts. He listened attentively when she talked about her frustrations with work, her creative blocks, and the quiet unhappiness that was beginning to creep into her life. He made her feel appreciated, valued, and above all, interesting. He didn't see her as just a wife or a colleague. He saw her as a complex, multifaceted person with dreams and desires of her own. Claire found herself looking forward to her workdays, to the moments when she would catch his eye across the office, the stolen smiles that held a spark of something more. She started dressing up more, a subtle, almost unconscious effort to present her best self. The mundane routines of her life felt less tedious, more manageable with the prospect of interacting with Daniel. She knew, deep down, that she was treading on dangerous ground. She knew that the feelings she was developing for Daniel were inappropriate, a betrayal of her marriage. But there was a magnetic pull she couldn't resist, a seductive whisper that told her that she deserved to feel alive again. She felt conflicted, torn between her loyalty to Andrew and the exhilarating allure of Daniel's attention. Was this just a harmless flirtation, or was it the first step on a treacherous path? The project was a nightmare, a demanding client, unrealistic deadlines, and a team struggling to stay afloat. Claire and Daniel found themselves working late into the night, fueled by caffeine and a shared sense of camaraderie. The office was quiet, the only sound the hum of the air conditioner and the soft clatter of keyboards. As they finalized the presentation, a shared joke sparked a spontaneous burst of laughter, a light, carefree moment amidst the chaos. Their hands brushed while reaching for a document, a casual contact that sent a jolt of electricity through Claire. In that fleeting moment, the air between them seemed to thicken. Their eyes met, and the unspoken tension that had been simmering between them finally bubbled to the surface. It was a look of recognition, a silent acknowledgement of the feelings they had been trying to suppress. Daniel leaned in, almost imperceptibly, and in a moment of utter recklessness, Claire leaned in too. Their lips met, a soft, tentative touch that quickly escalated into a passionate kiss. It was a kiss filled with longing, desire, and the forbidden thrill of crossing a line. The world seemed to fade away as they stood there, locked in an embrace that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Claire should have pulled away, should have reminded herself of the vows she had made, of the man waiting for her at home. But in that moment, she didn't care. The kiss had unlocked something within her, a deep-seated yearning for passion, intimacy, and the intoxicating thrill of being desired. When they finally broke apart, their eyes were wide, their breaths ragged. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words and a profound sense of unease. Claire knew that this wasn't just a mistake. It was a turning point, a moment that would forever alter the course of her life. She felt a mix of guilt, confusion, and a strange sense of liberation. What now? How could she possibly undo what had just happened? The kiss had opened a Pandora's box of emotions, a confusing cocktail of guilt, desire, and the relentless pull toward Daniel. Claire tried to compartmentalize her feelings, to convince herself that it was a lapse in judgment, a one-time mistake. But deep down, she knew that she was lying to herself. She couldn't erase the memory of that kiss, the feeling of being truly seen, of being desired in a way she hadn't felt in years. The pull towards Daniel was irresistible, a constant temptation she found herself unable to ignore. She started living a double life, a careful balancing act between her role as a devoted wife and the thrilling, yet dangerous, allure of the affair. At home, she played the part, engaging in superficial conversations with Andrew, nodding politely when he talked about his academic work. She made dinner, cleaned the house, and tried to maintain the facade of a happy marriage, all the while feeling like a fraud. Every time she touched Andrew, kissed him, or said the words, "I love you," a wave of guilt washed over her, a searing reminder of her betrayal. With Daniel, she was someone else entirely. She was free, unburdened by the weight of her marriage, able to explore the depths of her feelings without fear or guilt. She reveled in their stolen moments, the brief encounters in the hallway, the secret text messages, the passionate embraces during their late-night work sessions. The adrenaline rush of secrecy fueled their affair, the knowledge that they were indulging in something forbidden, making it all the more intoxicating. She became an expert at hiding her tracks, deleting messages, making excuses for late nights at the office. Her life had become a carefully constructed web of lies, a precarious illusion that she knew could shatter at any moment. She was living on borrowed time, and the weight of her deception was slowly crushing her soul. The strain of living a double life was taking a toll. Claire found herself constantly exhausted, both physically and emotionally. She suffered from insomnia, her mind racing with thoughts of Andrew and Daniel, the guilt and fear that were constantly gnawing at her. She started losing weight, her face pale and drawn. She found herself snapping at Andrew for trivial things, her patience wearing thin. The woman she once was, the confident, happy, and loyal wife, was slowly fading away, replaced by a shadow of her former self. She hated herself for betraying Andrew, for lying to the man she had promised to love and cherish. She knew what she was doing was wrong, that she was inflicting immense pain on someone who had always been kind and loving to her. She tried to stop, to extricate herself from the mess she had created, but the pull towards Daniel was too strong. She was addicted to the thrill, the excitement, and the validation she found in his arms. She was trapped in a destructive cycle, a dangerous dance of desire and guilt, a path that was leading her further and further away from her marriage and herself. The guilt manifested itself in subtle ways. She started avoiding eye contact with Andrew, unable to bear the weight of her deceit. She would become overly affectionate, smothering him with hugs and kisses, as if trying to compensate for her betrayal. She found herself becoming increasingly anxious, afraid that her secret would be discovered, that her world would come crashing down around her. The joy she had once felt had been replaced by a gnawing emptiness, a hollow feeling that was impossible to ignore. She had traded her peace of mind for a few stolen moments of passion, and the price she was paying was steep. The evening started like any other. Andrew was working late, buried under a pile of books, and Claire was scrolling through her phone, trying to distract herself from her guilt. A text message popped up from Daniel, a simple "I miss you," but it was enough to trigger a chain of events that would shatter her world. Andrew, drawn by the light of her phone, glanced over and read the message. The look on his face was something Claire would never forget, a mix of shock, confusion, and utter heartbreak. He didn't shout, didn't accuse. He simply looked at her, his eyes wide with pain, his face etched with disbelief. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the frantic beating of Claire's heart. The pretense she had so carefully maintained was gone, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. He asked her if she was having an affair. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was written all over her face. Andrew demanded to know everything, every detail of her betrayal. He wanted to know when it had started, how far it had gone, how she could do this to him. And for the first time, Claire confronted the full weight of her actions, the devastating impact of her choices. The words poured out of her, a confession of her infidelity, her lies, and the emptiness that had driven her to seek solace in the arms of another man. As she spoke, she watched the love in his eyes slowly extinguish, replaced by a pain that was almost palpable. The sound of his heart breaking was almost audible. Claire had finally destroyed the love she had once cherished. Andrew moved out the next day, packing his belongings in silence, his eyes avoiding hers. The emptiness he left behind was profound, a void that seemed to swallow everything around it. Claire found herself alone in the home they had built together, the silence deafening, the memories of their life together haunting her every step. She wandered through the empty rooms, touching the things that held their shared history, the books they had read together, the photos on the wall, the furniture they had picked out as a couple. The weight of her betrayal settled on her like a heavy blanket. She replayed the events that had led to this point, the unspoken frustrations, the growing distance, her choices that had shattered their marriage. The guilt was unbearable, a constant reminder of the hurt she had inflicted on Andrew. She missed him with an ache that went straight to her core. She missed his presence, his gentle touch, his quiet humor. She realized how much she had taken him for granted, how she had allowed her own insecurities and unmet needs to blind her to the man who had always been there for her. She spent countless nights crying, her tears staining the pillow, a constant reminder of her pain and her self-loathing. She realized how easily she had traded a genuine love for a hollow affair, a fleeting passion that had ultimately left her empty and alone. The silence of the house echoed her loneliness, a constant reminder of the devastation she had wrought. She had traded her life for an illusion, and now she was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered world. Daniel and Claire ended their affair shortly after Andrew had discovered the truth. The passion that had once burned so brightly had quickly faded, replaced by awkward silences and a palpable sense of unease. The forbidden thrill was gone, and all that was left was the harsh reality of what they had done. Daniel hadn't wanted to destroy a marriage. He hadn't been seeking a lasting relationship. He was an escape, an adventure, a break from his own monotonous life. He hadn't wanted the messy aftermath of a broken life. Claire had been a side project, nothing more. Claire finally saw him for who he truly was, charming and charismatic, yes, but ultimately shallow and incapable of real commitment. She realized that he had never truly cared for her, that their relationship had been built on a foundation of lies and deception. The feelings she had developed for him, the passion she had felt in his arms, now felt hollow, empty. She had mistaken infatuation for love, lust for genuine connection. She had been chasing a mirage, a fleeting illusion of happiness that had ultimately led her to an abyss of regret. She told him that she needed to focus on her life, on making amends for her mistakes.
He was relieved.
He didn't want to be a part of her broken life. Claire was devastated but knew that it was the right decision. What had once felt like a whirlwind romance had now become a painful reminder of her infidelity. She realized that Daniel wasn't the answer to her problems. He was an escape from them. He was the symptom of her discontent, not the cure. She had used him, as he had used her, and now both of them were left with nothing but the ashes of a shattered illusion. Claire knew she couldn't continue down the path of self-destruction. She had to face her mistakes, understand what had led her down this path, and find a way to heal. She started therapy, delving deep into the recesses of her mind, uncovering the insecurities and unresolved issues that had contributed to her choices. She talked about her feelings of inadequacy, the unspoken frustrations in her marriage, and the desperate need to feel seen and desired. She realized that the affair wasn't just about lust. It was about her own deep-seated pain, her longing for something more. She started journaling, pouring out her thoughts and emotions onto the pages, using the words as a cathartic release. She realized she had neglected herself, forgotten her own dreams and desires. The affair was a symptom of her own neglect, a desperate cry for attention from a part of herself that she had ignored for too long. She started taking small steps towards self-care, exercise, meditation, and rediscovering her passion for art. She immersed herself in creativity, using her artistic talents to express the pain and confusion she was experiencing. She also realized that she needed to apologize to Andrew, not to ask for forgiveness, but to acknowledge the pain she had caused him. She wrote him a letter, pouring her heart onto the page, expressing her sincere remorse for her betrayal. She knew that she didn't deserve his forgiveness, but she hoped that he could at least understand her regret. She wanted him to know that she knew how badly she had hurt him and that she would carry the weight of her actions for the rest of her life. This was her journey to redemption, a slow and arduous process of self-reflection, accountability, and healing. Claire reached out to Andrew, not expecting forgiveness, but needing him to know how deeply sorry she was. They met in a quiet cafe, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Andrew's eyes were guarded, his face still etched with pain. She could see the heartbreak in his eyes, the raw wound that her betrayal had inflicted. She apologized, her voice choked with emotion, expressing her deep remorse for the hurt she had caused him. She took responsibility for her actions, admitting that she had been selfish, dishonest, and deeply flawed. She acknowledged that her choices had destroyed their marriage, that she had broken the vows they had made together. Andrew listened quietly, his gaze unwavering. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer any words of comfort. When she finished, the silence was almost unbearable. He finally spoke, his voice low and strained. He told her that he didn't know if he could ever forgive her, that her betrayal had shattered something precious within him. He said that he still felt the pain, the anger, and the confusion. He didn't dismiss her remorse, but he said it was going to take time for him to process the hurt she had inflicted. Claire understood. Forgiveness wasn't something she could demand. It was something she had to earn. She knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous, but she was committed to doing everything she could to atone for her mistakes. She realized that even if Andrew never forgave her, she still had to forgive herself. She had to learn to live with the consequences of her choices, to accept that her actions had caused irreparable damage. But she was not going to let them define the rest of her life.